Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Voices of Western. This is the Humans of Western podcast, where we aim to delve deeper into the lives of Western students, staff, and alumni. My name is Madison, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Hossein. Before we get started, be sure to follow us on our social media, our Facebook page, our Instagram page at humans_Western, and our new TikTok account at Humans of Western. Hossein, you can take it away.
Awesome. So today we have Jonathan Panagas with us. He's a Western alum and a graduate of 2010 with a degree in economics. That was like right around the time of financial crisis for those of you who remember. So it was an interesting time to graduate. He has been involved in the tech sales industry for quite some time. Some of the companies he worked for include Oracle, NetSuite, Social Bakers, LinkedIn, and more recently as an account executive at DocuSign. He also enjoys helping the students and giving back to the Western community, which is why we're delighted to have him with us today. Jonathan, on to you. Maybe give us some introduction on yourself.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that intro. And it was great to be reminded that I graduated in 2010. That was quite a while ago. You know what? Thanks again, guys, for having me on. I'm super excited to be speaking with your team. A little intro on myself. Again, I've worked within the tech sales industry for over the past decade. Graduated at Western, very proud to have graduated at Western, and still, trying to provide as much, as much support to the university as possible. So I like to, see myself as a potential coach for anybody who's interested in getting involved in my industry specifically, as well as anybody who's looking to maybe grow out their brands on LinkedIn.com. I did spend 5 years at LinkedIn, so I've got some expertise and some tips and tricks on how you could actually kind of promote yourself a little bit more to stand out when it comes to trying to get those jobs that I know a lot of you are probably looking forward to starting to apply for over the next little while. I'm from Toronto, Ontario. I live right downtown. Past that, I'm looking forward to just having a little discussion around my industry and, for those interested in tech sales, how you could get involved in anything from software to hardware, from startups to large enterprises. So with that, why don't I turn things over to you and we can kind of get started.
To begin, so you studied economics at Western, and as an economics major myself, I definitely think we have some similar experiences there, but a lot of people tend to pursue jobs in finance or banking. And so I'm interested in how you entered the tech industry after graduation.
Yeah, so as mentioned kind of on my intro, I graduated in 2010, which meant I was studying economics right during the mortgage crisis and during the recession. Cool thing about that is you got to learn a lot. I mean, we actually had professors come into class and basically like throw the book away. I remember we had one professor specifically who, told us not to purchase a textbook for the second semester because he didn't want to teach us what he had been taught because nothing, no longer applied. So it was an interesting time for sure. I think, graduating at the height of a recession, my original goal when I joined Western was to get into banking. I wanted to get into financial services, maybe, kind of climb the ladder and one day get to that investment banking tier. But those jobs weren't as attractive in 2010. So while I was at Western, I actually had a small startup. And my main kind of contribution to the startup was sales. So I started selling at a very, very young age. And at around the age of 20 years old, I actually had some at-bats with, some very, very well-known prominent CEOs across Canada and across North America. So I think that kind of helped me build a little confidence in the sales skill. When I was studying economics, I also had this, infatuation with the market. And there were so many different kind of macroeconomic anomalies happening across the globe. So, really kind of keeping a close eye on the stock market at the time was super exciting. And one thing that I noted was tech stocks didn't seem to be crashing like everything else. Certainly not like banking or even manufacturing stocks, which were absolutely just tanking at the time. So I started following a lot of the major software companies out there, namely companies like SAP, Oracle, and Microsoft, and then even hardware companies like Apple. And one stock that I really kind of became infatuated with was Oracle. And I noticed that, this was one stock that just continuously outperformed year over year. And, in that time, when a lot of companies were really strapped for cash, they were actually acquiring really, really large companies. A couple of years after I graduated, they actually made, I think at the time, their largest acquisition ever of Sun Microsystems. So really starting to dominate kind of the hardware game as well. I was fortunate to have built kind of a little consortium of mentors. Sitting down with these mentors, I kind of positioned the idea of getting into software sales and starting kind of right at the bottom in what's known as business development. Today there's a couple different terms for that same role. A lot of companies call it sales development as well. I decided to kind of jump into the software sales world, and I took my first position with Oracle at that business development role. So that's kind of how I got to this game. Ever since then, I'm very, very happy that I made that decision.
Wow, that was a lot of great experiences that you had there. I guess one thing I'm interested in learning more about is you said you were 20 when you were doing the sales portion of your startup. Was that during university? Like, how were you able to manage that or even get started with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like a lot of students out there, a lot of students go into university wanting to be an entrepreneur. And I was certainly of that mindset. I didn't want to work for someone. I wanted to make my own job. At that time, I had a startup that was really focused around the clean tech space and had some, phenomenal angel investors involved in that company as well. Basically I was able to balance my time through passion, I would say. So just being really, really passionate about the idea and about the potential of where the company could go allowed me to, have that kind of extra little bit of energy that you need amongst, both trying to juggle your curriculum or your class schedule, studying for those midterm exams that I know everybody's going through right now, and also having, quasi social life after school. So I'd say passion was probably the biggest motivator, really trying to become that entrepreneur was something that I think pushed me day in, day out.
Interesting. And I'm sure you learned quite a bit from, starting your own business and stuff like that, especially during your undergrad. Hossein and I have talked a lot about how, we're in our undergrad doing our degrees, but at the same time, you're learning so much outside of the classroom as well. And I think that's something a lot of people don't realize when they go into university. And so I'm kind of curious as to like what skills you are developed in your undergrad that you found most like transferable into a professional workspace.
Yeah, definitely. And you're referring to kind of like the economics training and that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. So, again, going into university, when I decided to go into economics, I thought this is perfect for banking and for financial services. But now looking back at things, the applications are really kind of endless. I know today my economics education really helps me when it comes to getting creative around putting together a deal. So in software sales, once you get to kind of a certain level, you're putting together potentially multi-million-dollar deals that could get highly, highly complex, and just kind of understanding how you could be flexible in certain parts of that deal and how you could actually rearrange certain variables within ultimately the equation that is going to sell that customer, I think goes a long way in helping you be successful. Also, just kind of the way your mind ends up working. So being able to look at, and I really kind of think macroeconomics for this, being able to look at how specific events could really, really kind of change a long list of things across the world. It makes you start to think in a different way. And I think that becomes a really, really big asset, not just for what I do, but I think for a long, long list of careers that, a lot of people might be looking at today.
When it comes to structuring deals, like you said, like multi-million-dollar deals, one thing that I'm interested in learning more about is what are some of the considerations that you take into account and how, because being a salesperson is a difficult position to be in. You have to satisfy your own company and at the same time find something that works for the other company as well.
Yeah, you make a great point. So that is kind of the secret sauce to what makes, I think, somebody a really successful salesperson. It's not just selling to that customer, but it's also selling internally. So, when you're a sales executive, let's say within a software company like mine, there are certain parameters that you're allowed to play within, and that you're allowed to, potentially be creative within, in order to get a deal accomplished. Now, essentially, when it comes to being a salesperson, a huge part of your job is diagnosing a situation within your customers. So asking the right questions, finding out, why do they need to do something and why do they need to do something today? So we actually go through a series of meetings and a series of calls with every client, really starting to diagnose what that customer really needs and trying to map that need back to our solutions. So in doing that, right, that's kind of phase one of putting together the deal. Once we've identified this customer has some pain or has an issue that we could solve, we now kind of take that information and we map it back to our solution. We then put together a solution which is going to help that client and obviously, not just help them, but also provide them with a very strong ROI. And then the back end of the deal is figuring out what their budget is, how they might be willing to open up that budget and what other parts of the organization might be able to add to that budget. And then finally, taking all of that information and essentially selling it internally. So figuring out a way to make this happen under the parameters that we're given to work with it. So that's where having kind of that open mindset really helps you get, I love the word dynamic when it comes to putting together a deal. So not looking at things two-dimensionally, but really kind of looking at things from every single angle and trying to figure out, how can I, in a sense, fit this square in this circle that my client has given me, right? Or the other way around, whichever one works better. So I think, that's how, somebody gets really, really successful in becoming creative with their deal creation. So again, it's not just selling to that customer, it's also selling things internally and trying to figure out how can I make their needs and what they're giving me happen within my organization, and obviously happen within a way that is going to make us, a lot of money on the deal as well.
I liked how you mentioned about the part that you find the needs of the customers first and then see if you can help them, because I think the general opinion on sales is that you're trying to sell everything to anybody. That's what I thought before diving deeper into sales. And by that, I mean by watching YouTube videos, TikTok, Instagram, like all of those educational videos, which I find very interesting. And it's good to hear those opinions from you too.
Yeah, definitely. It's, there's this old kind of conception around sales that, all a salesperson's going to do is just call every single person that they can until somebody answers and somebody says yes. It's definitely not the game anymore, right? The game's become a lot more advanced. In fact, when you look at the top software or top tech companies out there, a large kind of group or a large portion of that population of those sales reps are coming from, industries like banking, like, management and business consulting. I know for some of the companies that I've worked for, we used to hire from, organizations like Deloitte or McKinsey or Accenture. So, really having kind of that client first mentality, and having that ability to, again, diagnose a problem and figure out, what type of pain is this individual or is this company really feeling, and how can we create a solution to help fix that pain. So, I definitely would say the brand of sales is starting to change. And for those in this industry, it's really night and day from, I think, some of the images that people think about when they think about the sales industry.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. It's almost like a puzzle. That's what I was thinking about, like as you were talking about it. And so would it be fair to say that like no two business like sales deals are ever the same? I feel like there's always learning involved, like as you're working on a deal as well, which I think is really interesting about the sales industry specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also comes from, how complex is the product that you're representing. In my case, as an example, at DocuSign, we've got hundreds of different products that we represent and that we're continuously developing. So you're right, no two sales are going to be the same. In many cases, you have to try to configure not only your pitch, but also your solution in order to, be that right solution for that customer. So, I think that's another kind of part of what makes this industry so exciting. It's the ability to have new conversations with new people every single day and figure out new problems or new solutions for problems that your customers are facing. Now, is there some motions, or are there some motions that you can replicate? Absolutely. There's definitely certain things that work better than others. And when you inject those best practices into your day-to-day cycle, it's just going to make you that much more successful. But I think that's that's the case with any type of role that you take on, right? You try to find out what works best, and you try to create, scalability in that approach so that, you're not working necessarily harder, you're just working a little bit smarter.
One other thing, so for sale, in order to be a successful salesperson, you have to know a lot of people and a lot of departments, all of those things. So I'm curious, how do you establish those important connections within the people in your industry?
Yeah,
you can
definitely
think about mentors as well at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I'll take that in two parts. One, how do you build out your network? Because your network is extremely, extremely important. And I'll speak from, somebody being in tech sales, but I think it's important for almost any role that you might take on. So growing your network should be, I'd say, one of the top 5 focuses any students have, as they're getting towards that graduating year. And there's so many easy ways that you can do this. One, leverage the network that you have being at the University of Western Ontario. It's an absolute no-brainer. So this is something that we talk about in some of the workshops that I've done with the university over the years. Going through, let's say, kind of your top 5, your top 10 dream jobs that you're looking to have one day when it comes to planning for your career. Going to LinkedIn, opening up those companies and saying to yourself, or just literally there's a button that you click on that says Western Alumni, find out who works for that company that went to Western. It's so easy. It literally takes 2 seconds to do. And then once you do that, you're able to actually start seeing the alumni that you have a very strong commonality with, the commonality that you both graduated from the same school. In fact, psychologically, this is something that people really take to heart. So when you message somebody on LinkedIn, you're about 50% more likely to get a response from them if you graduated from the same university. So when you think about just that one success rate, reaching out to these people at that company that you want to work for and asking, can I buy you a virtual coffee? Or hopefully in the next few months, can I buy you an actual coffee when we get back to normal? That goes such a long way in allowing you to, learn from that person, right? Learn from somebody who was maybe in your exact same situation not too long ago. Learn from somebody who works for the company that you're interested in, or one of the companies that you're interested in working for. They might even have the exact position that you'd like to have at their age, or maybe you want to have that position at a younger age. So being able to again, leverage that connection, learn from them, is, I think, a huge way that you're able to start expanding your network quickly. A lot of these people might even turn into mentors for you, right? So I'll tell you, at least, I'm 34 years old. When somebody reaches out to me on LinkedIn, and this happens quite frequently, where, they're asking to learn something about my career, I'm always going to take that call. I might be a little bit busier at certain times of the year, so I might push it off, but I'm definitely going to take that call. And especially if they preface that message with the fact that they're graduating from Western, or they recently graduated from Western, I'm just going to be that much more inclined to help them. So, again, I think this is a best practice that students should be really leaning into. Not only are you going to learn so much about that role in that company, but you potentially are going to get a mentor. And then, the last point I'll make, and this is probably the most important point, if that conversation goes well, not only have you made, a new connection within that organization that you want to work for, but that person can now refer you into that company. All right. And I know specifically in the tech industry, for some of the, let's say tier 1 tech providers out there, it's much harder to get hired without a referral. Much harder. All right. In fact, for a lot of companies out there, only 10% of their new hires come from an external hire that didn't come in through a referral. All right. So being able to build that connection and get that referral, I think, goes a long way in helping you get that job one day. And even if you can't get that job right out of school, cultivating that relationship over the years as you start to build up your experience, you're only a couple years maybe from getting that referral and ultimately getting that job with that company that you really want to work for. Now, kind of going back to that second part of your question around the importance of mentors, I think this is an extremely critical part of anyone's career. It's something that you don't want to waste any time when it comes to actually building. When I was at LinkedIn, we actually had a term for this. We called it your personal board of directors. And I really love that term because I think it resonates well with everybody. If you just kind of, envision what that looks like, right? A boardroom of individuals whose business is you, and who cares about you. I think that's something that, again, you should be looking to start to establish while you're in university. There's a couple ways that you could do this. I already mentioned one tactic that I think works very well, but even look inward, right? Look at friends and family. Think about, some of your friends and maybe their family members that have positions that you'd like to have one day, and reach out to these people. You're not looking to establish a weekly cadence with them or anything like that, but you're looking for somebody who's going to give you advice that's going to help you down the road. I know I personally have, I'm very fortunate throughout my career to have built this pretty big boardroom when it comes to my mentors. And some of them aren't involved in every career decision. Some of them are involved very specifically for something that I know they'd enjoy helping me with. Whereas others, I contact for any single career move that I'll ever make. I think not only is this something that you start to develop throughout your career, as you start kind of growing through your 20s and certainly throughout your 30s, you'll start picking up these mentors with each position that you have. You'll find them both socially and professionally. You'll probably end up working for some managers who just went that extra mile for you, and who actually cared a little bit more than the average. This is somebody that you might be able to add to that board of directors. Another piece of advice that I definitely want to give is don't think about this so formally, right? This doesn't have to be a formal relationship. This is just somebody who shows a little bit of an extra interest in you, and particularly a little extra interest in your professional goals and your potential. So again, this doesn't have to be some type of weird formal, firm relationship. It could definitely be something flexible, and it could be a touch point that you have with them once a year, once every couple of years, or even just, when you have a big decision to make. There's very few people who wouldn't take on that opportunity. I highly recommend everybody start looking for those mentors. And as I said, as you go throughout your career, just keep adding to that list. And by the time you're, my age, probably about 15 years down the road for a lot of you, you'll be really kind of proud of that group that you're able to assemble.
I like that. That was amazing. So let me share one of my stories as well. When I was in my first year, I went to a networking workshop, and this instructor was talking about mentorship. I asked him, well, I'm new to Canada. How could I get myself mentors to help me? He said, the fastest way to not get a mentor is to ask someone to be your mentor. Why? Because it freaks people out. For some reason, like they think there would be some sort of expectations from them. And that would not be the best approach. Over time, though, I found what works for me is just, as you said, thinking about a move that you want to make. Who are the first people that come to your mind, and how comfortable you are reaching out to them? If you're comfortable reaching out to them and you think they would be able to help you, those people might not be formally your mentors, but if you repeat the process maybe 2 to 3 times and then continue giving back to them, I think it's fair to say that this is sort of a mentor-mentee relationship being established. So that's one thing. And the other thing, so I loved how you mentioned about the LinkedIn feature on viewing the school alumni. One thing I discovered last year, which is huge, is that you could also filter by their program that they completed. So I'm in MedSci, I want to go into tech. It's not a popular transition for MedSci. Like they usually go to medicine or dentistry, those fields. I could literally go on LinkedIn and filter by people's positions and see who is in, like, let's say sales, who had studied math sci in the past. That's also another cool feature of LinkedIn.
Yeah. And that's another commonality. That's a much stronger commonality, right? This is somebody who actually sat in your seat, who has the exact kind of career that maybe you're interested in, even at that portion of your career, because careers change a lot, right? So that's such a great point, and it's so easy to do. All you have to do is literally log into LinkedIn and give it a shot. There's nothing really stopping you.
Yeah, I think in the past, people hear the term networking and they're like really intimidated by it because it seems like that professional relationship that you have to build right off the bat. But I like how you mentioned how it's going to change, it's going to evolve over time. Just like reach out to a lot of alumni and leveraging the people that you do know and the people that you do have. And so I know a lot of our listeners and me as well are going to take that advice. And as we go throughout our undergrads and our future careers. I just want to jump back into the software sales conversation specifically. So I want to know what is something that surprised you about the industry that you're in?
Yeah, so I would say when I started in the industry, it's, I don't want to say it's grueling work at the beginning, but it's a lot of cold calls. It's a lot of, people saying no to you. That is such important experience, by the way. You start to not really get concerned with it after the first few weeks of somebody hanging up on you abruptly. And you start getting much better at making sure that doesn't happen and keeping them on the phone. So I would say, once that transition happened, just understanding kind of where this career could really take you. I'd say that was the biggest surprise. I didn't know that, I'd say from a compensation standpoint, it's right up there with all the other, major careers that a lot of people are looking at. That was definitely a shock to me. Something else that, I started learning throughout my career was the fact that out of all the companies out there, tech companies generally take care of their employees, I'd say the best. So they care about wellness, they care about your mental health, they care about making sure that you've got as few stresses in life as possible. They care about making sure you're fed every day at lunch and that you've got unlimited snacks and really good coffee to keep you motivated throughout the day. Also how social the environment is and the cultures are. Culture is very, very important within my industry. And I'd say, I'll speak specifically for the sales portion, because in a lot of these companies, you'll find sales tends to be the biggest organization within the company. But culture is so, so important. So, a lot of people become friends and they become lifelong friends. When I think about where I had started at Oracle, that was again about 12 years ago. I'm still extremely, extremely close friends with most of the people that I worked with. In fact, since we've been on this call, 3 of them have text messaged me, who I haven't worked with since, we started together at Oracle in that business development role. So, I'd say kind of that social aspect, that culture, that ability to kind of have this family within the workplace as well, those were definitely things that were welcome surprises as I started to build my career within this industry and specifically within sales. One point to make as well is I'd say around diversity. So a lot of people maybe think of sales as something only for like extroverted people or only people who like you mentioned earlier, right? Like networking. Some people hear networking events and you start cringing. You're like, I don't want to go there and meet a bunch of people I've never spoken to before. I don't even like doing that. I'm quite extroverted. But that is definitely a misconception. I'd say if it's not 50-50, maybe it's 60-40, leaning in favor of introverted individuals who are extremely successful within this game and within this industry. So it's definitely not something that your personality has to be in line with. More so, you just have to be kind of a really smart individual who's good at solving problems, who's really, really organized and good at looking at data and presenting data the right way. So yeah, I'd say that's kind of something to tack on to the end of your question around some of the things that surprised me as I started moving up through my experience within tech sales.
I guess something I wanted to learn more about is, which you kind of touched on is how would someone know if sales is the right fit for them? Is it like lots of cold calling? Is it only cold calling at the beginning? Like, how is it like?
Yeah, definitely. So, again, going back to that last comment I made, I don't think the decision should be made solely based on your personality traits. All right. That's a misconception for sure. At the beginning, there is a lot of outreach. There's a lot of cold calling. But today, there's a lot of software platforms out there that actually help people within sales development or business development, have these kind of scalable activities, which allow them to have multiple touch points within a large territory or a large sum of accounts or sum of companies. So I would say, for individuals who like to solve problems, for people that are really good at reading data, and interpreting data in different ways. That's an extremely, extremely important part of this job. I'd say, individuals that are people. I guess that works. Who's a people person. I think that's super important as well, right? It's like something that I think helps me be successful in this role is the fact that I actually really like to help people. So I don't do this with all of my clients, but some of my clients I actually end up befriending, and caring about, not just their company solving their problems, but also helping this person bring a big win in for an organization. So like if you sell a large solution to a company who has a really big problem, that person who brought in that solution on the client's end, they end up being a hero within that organization. That can help them get a promotion, right? So, having that kind of care for other humans, I think is kind of cool. Wanting to become a part of a team is also something that's very important. When it comes to different identity profiles within sales, there was this one identity profile called the lone wolf. And the lone wolf was essentially a sales rep who just wanted to do everything by themselves, right? And thought, I'm good enough to get everything done. I don't really need the help of a team. That has completely gone extinct. So that no longer applies. Today, like selling is really a part of leveraging a larger team and collaborating across that team. So I think people who like that team environment would really love this industry as well. So I'd say those are some of the main things to look at. But yeah, at the beginning, get ready for some rejection, get ready for a little bit of a heavier lift when it comes to those prospecting activities. But once you get kind of further down that road of experience, the prospecting starts to melt away and you really start to focus on strategic initiatives every single day. And that's when the job gets really, really fun, because now you're really, really just focusing on strategy. And you've got, individuals who are on your team who are helping you with some of those other activities.
I guess just a follow up on the lone wolf example that you gave there. I'm curious to hear, how would the team help you in this case? I mean, if you're doing it alone, all by yourself, making sure all of the calls get done by the end of the day, that seems like a good tactic to me. But I'm sure having a team behind you is more beneficial. So I'm curious to hear more about those benefits.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say in two ways. One, that's not scalable. So having that lone wolf mentality, you're going to miss opportunities across the board, right? That's just going to happen. There's only one of you. So, not being scalable is definitely a huge Achilles heel in sales in general, right? Regardless if it's tech or any other type of sales. And then also, being able to invest your time wisely. So being that, if you're, let's say, the account executive or the account manager who's managing that relationship with the client, who's really working on trying to get that deal done, allowing people who have the skill sets, who have developed those skill sets throughout their career, to take on the other portions of that sales cycle, and really kind of be the all-star within that part of the team. It just allows you to really kind of get heads down and focused in, how am I going to build the right deal that's going to bring kind of this contract across the line and get this contract signed, right? How am I going to represent my customer as well as I can within my company, so that we might make some of the concessions necessary to get this contract completed? So again, leveraging that team and collaborating, it just goes such a long way in making sure that you free up your time to focus on, I'd say, what you'll enjoy the most about this type of role. And that's really being strategic.
Right. Makes sense. So kind of assigning the tasks based on who's like people's strengths, which is a trend that more and more companies are following these days.
Definitely. And once you get into like a complex sales organization, like the one I work for today, you're not even really assigning anything. You know what I mean? You're managing the group of clients that you have or the list of clients. But everybody else is kind of a master in their own domain. So like they're coming in knowing exactly what to do at each portion of that sales cycle. So, some of the roles that I work with, a sales development manager that we actually call marketing development managers. I work with a solutions engineer who is an absolute expert when it comes to the product itself, is able to have those highly, highly technical conversations at the CIO level that, I don't have the education or the experience to actually have. I work with a renewal specialist whose focus is mainly on ensuring that if anything's going wrong with the customer coming up to when they have to actually renew their contract with us, they're going to be kind of the first people on the ground to help solve for those problems and make sure that the customer is leveraging the platform to the maximum of its capabilities. So it's really kind of being able to maybe help keep those people organized within the account, but again, just trusting them to do what they do. And, again, focusing on the kind of the overall strategy on how you're going to get this deal completed. That's kind of what's going to make you successful. And ultimately, that's going to give you longevity in this career as well, right? If you think about that lone wolf example, like I got to tell you guys, sometimes this job gets exhausting. It really, really does. Other times it's super refreshing. Sales is definitely a pendulum, right? So there's highs and there's lows. When you lean on the team to help you with every single deal, they also carry the burden of that deal as well. So you're not just carrying that whole deal on your shoulders. It goes a long way in making sure, quarter over quarter, year over year, you have the energy to keep going.
So I just have one final question. It kind of brings everything full circle. And I love to ask alumni this specifically. It's how did your Western experience kind of shape who you are today? And I guess also, do you have any final advice for current Western students?
Yeah, definitely. So I loved my time at Western. I really, really loved the school. I think, Western did a bunch of things for me to shape who I am today. It gave me a phenomenal world-class education. It gave me even a social aspect to who I am, right? Being such a social university with so many opportunities to meet your fellow students, whether, it's inside the classroom or outside of the classroom. I think that helped me build up the personality that I have today. And also, just providing those resources that they give you while you're there and also while you're alumni, just help kind of propel you throughout your career. I brought up that example earlier, and I brought it up a few times on how you could lean on the alumni network. I've done that throughout my career. I've done that as a sales rep to get meetings with companies because an alumni of Western works at that company. And that type of stuff works, so being able to lean on that alumni network. I think today, within the active workforce, at least on LinkedIn, there's over 200,000 Western students who are actively working mostly within a white collar job on the LinkedIn platform. It's a lot of people that you could leverage. It's a big network that you could leverage throughout your career. So I'd say, those were some of the things that Western instilled in me. And, some kind of final advice that I would give to any students listening, don't be scared to reach out to anyone for help. Like if you're interested in having, a career that somebody has, all you got to do is send them a message. Don't be weird about it, kind of to the point that you made earlier. Don't try to make it this kind of formalized conversation. Just kind of be light, just be loose with the messaging and just approach it from a friendly angle and just ask people for help. Generally, when you ask someone for help, they're going to be very, very happy to help you. I think particularly when you're trying to juggle a full class load, when you're trying to juggle maybe midterms and coming up, your finals, this might seem like something that's overwhelming to take on. Literally takes maybe 20 to 30 minutes of going on LinkedIn and sending out some strategic messages to people that work within the companies that you want to work for. And you'll be shocked at how far it goes. So I'd say that's my advice. And then the last piece of advice is kind of really soak in your time there, soak in your time as a student as well, because it goes by very, very quickly, and we're always kind of rushing to get within our careers. But, once you get to my age, you kind of wish you could go back for, maybe a week or two, just go back in time and just enjoy it a little bit more. So yeah, enjoy your time there as well.
That's some awesome advice. Thank you, Jonathan. And yeah, leveraging the value of LinkedIn is huge. I wish someone had told me that earlier, but I still have time. It's fine. And I'll try to enjoy my last few weeks at Western.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. I learned so much about your industry and networking. And yeah, I know I'm going to take that advice as I go throughout my career after leaving Western once again in a couple of weeks. So
Awesome. Yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. If anybody, listening has any questions, and they want to kind of follow up on some of the points that we made in this discussion, feel free to put them in touch with me. I'm always happy to help students at Western or even Western alumni. And yeah, definitely enjoy your last few weeks. I know it's coming up. April's around the corner. So, enjoy your potentially your last month or two at Western.
Yeah, so thank you so much, everyone, for listening to this episode of Voices of Western. Once again, be sure to follow us on our social media. And yeah, we'll see you next week.